Hello everyone, and welcome to the Collectosphere. Now, this is the first video I'm going to post on my channel, and I thought for the first video, might as well try and keep it relevant to some of the current figures that are out as of October of 2024. And I just received this Deadpool in the mail about 2 days ago, and while I did a photo shoot with him on my Instagram and posted a video about him on my TikTok, I thought, you know what? He's a little inaccurate in a couple of spots, and I'm very picky about my paint. So I thought, you know what? For our first YouTube video, it would be great to just go through and kind of show my process of how I fix some of these things and highlight some of the sculpt or make him a little accurate to either my mind's eye or how he was portrayed in the movie. So for this, we're just going to be doing some real basic stuff. Um, I don't know. So there's a little bit of extra gold paint right here on this buckle. I'm going to show you how I tend to get rid of this without damaging the plastic. I'm also going to highlight a couple more gold accents that weren't taken care of, like on the back of the figure and in a couple of other places, like on the gloves. And I'm also going to repaint these little holster bits right here because in the film, this little bottom section, I'm going to grab his sword so I can point at it. My fingers are too big. But this little section down here is actually gold in the movie, whereas the rest of the section up here is black. So we're gonna go through and touch that up, and then just kind of add a little bit of black powder and just kind of darken the suit. I'm gonna try. We'll see how successful it is, but add a little bit of gold paint in the sword sheet or in the sword hilts. I am not good enough to paint the little Deadpool logo on the bottom of the sword, so won't be able to do that. But, see if we can touch up a little bit of gold paint on the swords as well. Maybe eventually, if I get a second copy or find some extra Desert Eagles, if I end up getting the previous release, I will also show you how I would do some gold Desert Eagles. But for now, I'm just going to keep these in the plain black plastic. I don't really feel the need to do any extra dry brushing. I kind of like the color still to try and keep it in that Marvel Legends aesthetic since I do collect Marvel Legends. But, for now, this is what we're going to do. But yeah. Tomorrow, Wolverine will also be in the mail. And with Wolverine, I will do the exact same thing, show the process of how I'm going to do a lot more heavy modifications on him. But just before I tear into this, a little bit of appreciation for this figure. I never picked up the first movie Deadpool. It was kind of hard to find in my area. I live in Los Angeles, so everything's kind of hard to find in this area. But I collected the SH figure arts. I have both of the SH figure arts from the first and second movie, and I do like those both, but I really like this one. It's a little more basic. It doesn't have one of my favorite joints, which is the ball joint in the mid torso. But even with the ab crunch, she still gets decent range and doesn't break up the sculpt too much. And gotta give props to Hasbro. The texture on here is really nice. On camera, the red color of the suit is actually a little different than what is in person. It's a little more. I don't really know how to describe this red, but it's a lot more pink. It's a more pink red than what is on camera. So I kind of don't mind, but I do feel the need to darken it up a little bit. Props for the head sculpt too. I actually really like how the size and shape, especially when you look at him from a little bit further, it does look like a real person in a suit, whereas the SH Figure Arts ones look like a comic book rendition of the movie Deadpool. So yeah, I mean it's going to be some real basic stuff, but I think it's important to show people how to do it so not all hope is lost. So first we might as well start with what I'm going to use. So I like to use this Tamaya Weathering Master. We're going to be using the gunmetal to add a little bit of darkness to the suit. Just from a bunch of movie stills that I've seen, there's usually some extra here and just in a couple of other spots. I'm not going to totally darken it like the end of the film, but it's going to be a little darker just to help dampen the sheen. So we're going to be using the gunmetal for the suit. It also adds a little bit of shine, but I'll probably dull coat him at the end of the process just because it'll match his film appearance a little better. Not going to be using silver, but this is a really great kit for doing dry brushed silver, especially if you're going to seal it at the end of your project. If you're not, It kind of rubs off, but it also gives it a more realistic look. So I really enjoy this. Don't use the rust that often, but this is also pretty good. Um, I will also be using, I'm not a real snob when it comes to paint. I kind of just use what's available. So this is some deco art I got on sale at Hobby Lobby. This is just a real nice shiny gold paint, and it hopefully it matches the sheen on Deadpool pretty well. I hope it will. Those look pretty close to me. So we're gonna use this. I'll put everything in frame so you guys can see it. Not like it's gonna focus. I also have this airbrush paint. So I like using airbrush paint because when it dries, it's a little more gloss than it is matte, unlike some normal paint. So there's a lot of scuffs and creases in the sword sheath back here. We're going to put a little bit of this in there too, just to help bring out some of that detail. And then I haven't quite decided if I feel like using acetone to remove this little bit of gold, but if I choose not to, I have these Citadel paints that are kind of dirty because last time I used them, they decided to spill all over my desk. So this is a contrast. I enjoy using this because it's thinner, so you can apply it in more coats, and it also gives a more even finish. And then just in case, I also have the base, which is a little thicker. Same concept though, but I do prefer contrast paints when I'm just doing touch-ups, or actually a lot of times too, especially when you're doing customs or figures that require a lot of black paint and in thin layers. I enjoy using this contrast. So I mean, you can't see contrast because it's blocked, but yeah, just regular. It's a Black Legion contrast Citadel paint. I do not do Warhammer, but my local Warhammer guy, we have a shop not too far from me, sold me on buying some of the paints, and I do not regret it. So we're going to start with the Tamaya Weathermaster. So how I like to apply this is, my kit's a little dirty, but I like to just take a Q-tip, and what I'll do in here is kind of rub this around in here, collect up some of that dust. Now see, there's that top coat that's got the rust in it. Flip it over, do the other side. Kind of get this nice and coated. And then I like to use my hand as my palette. I know it's not great, but it works. Excuse me. So here we're just gonna kind of go through, highlight some of these edges. See if I'll get it to focus on camera. Just kind of in the darker creases of the suit where it would be. Like in this ab section, there's a pretty prominent section of dirt on this part of the suit throughout the film. Right here down the center. A little bit on the arms. Just to kind of give it some more contrast. Do that on the face too. Now it's really light in person. It's a little darker than it is on camera, but it is there. Don't feel shy to reapply to your Q-tip because this stuff does come off really fast. Now, if you prefer an even darker tone, where this is super, super light, but has that slight, let me see if I turn down my light here. You'll be able to see it better. Nope, not really. So it is difficult to see, but it is there. It's really light. And then I like to go through, just kind of rub some of that top layer off. I'm not going for a super dirty look. I'm just going for a lightly worn look. Almost like when he's in the forest and he is desecrating the body of Logan. So just kind of, get in there, but not too thick, not too thin. Kind of get a lot of the highlighted raised edges. Now on camera, it looks like it has done absolutely nothing. In person, it does make a little bit of a difference. I might go through with a little bit of a darker paint just to kind of get a little heavier, but I haven't. We'll see. I kind of prefer a lighter dirt to my movie figures. So from there, I know it was super light, but that's kind of how I want to do it for my personal copy. So now I'm going to grab my paintbrush, which are the Citadel. This is a Citadel layer brush. I just try to find the smallest ones I can. I'm a very detail oriented. I'm a detail oriented painter, so I try to have the smallest brush so I can make the smallest marks. So from here, what I'm gonna do is grab the transparent, and I have a plate over here off camera. I'm going to put some paint on just to kind of get some on the plate, or just to get some in a little more spread out. I'm using the gray airbrush paint. This was bought from, well, it's Createx airbrush color, transparent. I can't remember where I bought this. It was probably Hobby Lobby or Michael's. One of the two. It's where I get a lot of my paint stuff. It's cheap, but it is still, just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's bad. So here I'm going to come to the back of this sword scabbard, just kind of coat this in there, this gray paint, just to fill in all these creases and get some of the detail to shine. I'm gonna add a little more. Just I took Deadpool off camera, but it's a habit. Just kind of get it in there nice and coated. And then I like to take a rag or a tissue, and I don't have any near me. So, you know what? I think I have one in my box. I do have a little paint box with me right here off camera too. So from here, this is a little rag I'm going to use. I'm just going to kind of go in there and wipe off all of that top excess. It dries really quick, so you do have to be careful about that. But all this is going to do, it's going to give the sword sheath a little bit of a different color. It's not so flat black, but it also gives a little more detail to the sword sheath. This is a little heavy on this side. I might try and remove some of that. Just a little more force. Sometimes a little bit of water works too because it reactivates the paint. But there you go. Now a little bit of some more of the details are a little bit more prevalent, which is what I was going for. So yeah. And then, let's see, does anywhere else need that? I don't feel like anywhere else particularly needs that. I feel in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, his suit was very bright throughout all scenes except for that end bit. So from here, what I'm going to do is rinse my brush, a little bit of water, get it nice and cleaned off. Then after that, we're going to do a little bit of gold accenting. Now, gold accenting, or just accenting in general, it can be fun, but it can also be an absolute nightmare. It just depends on how sturdy your hands are and how big of an object you are trying to paint. Now, for me, when it comes to these kinds of things, I like to go with just a little bit of paint on the edge of my brush, and then come in, see, like this is the pocket right there. Just going to go in, kind of touch at it, just get a little bit down, then move to the next one, just to allow some of that paint time to dry. There we go. There's paint on both now. That's not how it's going to be, but it's a start. I'm going to go back, do a second pass over. You don't need to if you don't want to, but you could, and I will personally. Just checking all the rest of his gold accenting. It looks pretty good. I'll fix this buckle, but there's no extra gold that needs to be added there. I know he has these extra pads on his hands right here in the movie, or on the figure. I cannot remember if they are gold or not. I'm just gonna leave them because I don't like adding extra paint to the hands just because it chips so easy. And knowing myself, I will definitely look at that and repaint it often. So I'm just gonna leave it. By now these are dry. If the paint on your brush is still wet, you can just do a second pass over, and there you go. It's starting to look good. So I do not believe the paint on my brush is wet anymore. I'm going to grab a little extra and go back to the second pocket. Just do another, a little once over. Now the pocket has some more color. And it is starting to look good. And you know, this gold is not exact to these other pockets, but to the naked eye, to the untrained painter like myself, I think this is more than fine. So there we go. Happy with that, and I'm ready to move on. So now, next thing I'm going to tackle is fixing this little spot up here. So I think I've decided I'm just going to use a little bit of nail polish remover, which is acetone. So I'm going to first put my brush in the water so it can get clean. This is the nail polish remover that I have been using. I think it damages the plastic a little less than um, normal acetone. I used to use 100% acetone, and I have ruined many of figures that way. I don't really care for this lid, but you know, it's a good way to only get a little bit in the top. Just a couple little things, and you got that much. So I'm going to dip a little bit in this Q-tip, and I like to just make sure there's not too much. I'll rub it on my hand, grab the figure, and I like to make little circles to rub off the excess. Little circles make so I'm not trying to push into one spot too hard. After that, just wipe it off to make sure it's not eating through the plastic. You know, sometimes the paint is a little thicker, a little bit too much overspray here, and it's a little tougher to get off. When it's tougher to get off is when I get worried, because then I'm like, oh, am I going to melt the plastic? I just went off camera, but I'm just applying a little bit more acetone. So I'm just going to keep going through and try and get these extra bits of paint off. And you know what? I am okay if I damage the gold paint on the actual figure from the factory, because I have a gold paint that is pretty sufficient. So, I mean, that's up to personal choice. If you could care less about there being a little bit of overspray, you don't have to do any of this. But for myself, I do care a little bit about overspray and how that looks. So there we go. I'm pretty happy with how clean that is. There's a little bit still right there and on the bottom of the buckle, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. He's going to stand up there on the shelf, probably behind Wolverine, because I'm anticipating I'm going to like that Wolverine more than Deadpool. Not saying this is a bad figure. It's just, it's hard to deny when you grew up with Wolverine that Wolverine is cooler. So from here, what we're going to do is go through, and I'm just going to look, make sure there's no, so like there's this section here that needs a little bit of black paint touch up. I move this, there's a little bit there too. I saw some earlier on the back of this bicep. Same thing over here. So I'm just going to go through now, make sure there's nothing else that is outstanding. Just going to go through with a little bit of this Citadel contrast. Yes, I know some people are going to say that it's evil that I'm using the same brush for all of this. I say whatever. You know, it's your brush. Do what you want. Man, that is really stuck. So there we go. So with this, because this is so dark and it applies so easy, I'm just going to take a little bit. And then from here, I'm just going to go through. And I'm going to dab it on my hand first, but lightly go through. Just touch those spots up. Now this contrast paint dries a lot quicker than your normal acrylic because it's so thin. Like your apple barrels and stuff. I use a lot of apple barrel paint because it's cheap. But this dries incredibly quick, and it achieves the desired result really fast. I mean, you can see this side is almost dry, but yeah, so it's nice and easy. What I might do too is a little bit of dry brushing, get as much paint off of this as possible. Just go through and go through and do a little bit of pushing the paint in. Just gonna wipe it off. So that way it kind of stays in the suit. Put a little too much on his face there, but it comes off with just my nail. So, that added a little bit of a darker spot right there to the chest. There's a little bit here in the ab work. A little too much. Let me see if I scrape something off. Yeah, I did. And as you can see, this is pretty much all sealed up. This is all sealed up on this side. And it's the same case on the back. And it's pretty much the same sheen. And once you matte coat it, if you choose to matte coat it like I will, it lines up real nice, real quick. So, yeah. The final bit is going to be these side holsters, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just a little bit of this contrast paint. I like this more than the base coat. I think I've already explained that, but just to reaffirm. Just going to kind of go through. Nice, easy layer. Just going to throw some paint down on the plastic. In hindsight, thinking about it right now, probably would have been better to start with the base because the base is a little thicker. So we're going to try that on the other side and see if my theory proves true. If not, then I will stick to what it is that I'm doing and just go back to the contrast paint. So now we're going to go the other side, and this is base paint. Yes, this is a little thicker. It'll take longer to dry, but might look better overall. And I think having these, brown holsters or holster adjacent pieces gone might add to the look of the figure a little more. It's less distracting at the hips with the brown accents, especially because there's not a whole lot of brown on the figure anyway. It's mainly right here at the belt. So I'm gonna go through and I'm just adding the base paint to the other side now. Not that the contrast paint dried bad or anything, but it might be a little better looking with the base paint. Go through and do that. There we go. I'll wait a minute for it to dry. And while it's drying, sometimes if I'm really impatient, want to get it done quick, I'll kind of just run my brush over, thin it out, just to get it to dry quicker. Or usually I have a fan on. Doing the video, I wasn't sure how loud the fan would be, so I have the fan off just to help with noise reduction and all that. So yeah, now we're going to wait for those to dry and set him back down. I'm going to clean my brush again. The thing about the Citadel paint that I particularly enjoy is you don't really need a whole lot. It's not like other paints where you need 5 or sometimes three, 4, sometimes 5 layers of paint to get the desired color. Sometimes you just need 1 or 1.5. Rarely have I ever had to do 3, as a couple times I've had to do 2. So now, these sides are a little drier, so I'm going to go through with a bit of gold accent paint on the bottom. Now I left the brown unpainted because an undertone of brown on an overtone of gold is better than gold on black, which is more difficult to try and highlight the sheen of the gold when you have a brighter color on top of a darker color. So yeah, I didn't mess up. There we go. Now that is the desired effect. A little bit of black with a little bit of gold adds to the overall costume. Now I don't know why on that side it kind of looks slanted, like I overpainted. Might just be the sculpt. Oh, I definitely overpainted on this side. It's okay. I'm a little brute about it and just use my hand to get some of the excess paint off. Hands are washable. It's harder to get dried paint off of painted plastic. Yeah. And for the black, I'll just go back and paint over it. But yes, there you go. Now the little things sticking off the belt are a little less obviously brown and more black and gold. I think looks good. I used to use I think it's Army Painters. They have a wash They have a brown wash that is pretty excellent for highlighting dark details. Like mud, or not mud, but dirt. It makes them look dirtier. Um, and I ran out. I need to buy more, but that would also be a really, really good substitute for the Tamaya weathering kit. Just little tiny, tiny bits, or else it will stain and it will get in there real nice and heavy. So, oops, looks like I got some gold paint on his finger. That's okay. That's easy to just scrape off. Don't be afraid, especially on these cheaper $20-$25 figures. Um, I'm not. I never really get worried about a little bit of excess paint. It's easy enough to take off, um, and just as long as you're not using acetone. I've learned that toothpicks are fantastic at getting crap off, and they work just as well as acetone in certain situations. Now, I'm not sure if you can see what I'm doing over here, but I'm just grabbing a little more contrast paint to go back over the section of gold that I missed. Bring it closer to the camera so we can both see it. There we go. It was a little thick, but oh well, what are you going to do? So, yep, just going to go over, make sure everything is good. Put a little bit of extra there just because I missed overpainted. So yeah, there we go. Now I'm going to wait a little bit for him to dry completely. I'm not going to do the matte coat in this video because it is dark outside now. It is like 10 o'clock here, West Coast time. And it is a little late for me to be out there trying to spray paint all this stuff. So yeah, in summary, it's not a whole lot of actually customizing. It's just this is how I tend to fix or correct some paint issues on my figures. I do this with a lot of figures. Most figures I get from Hasbro, I have something I would like to tweak. And for this one, it's just dirtying the suit just a little. I mean, it's really, really faint, but that's kind of how I wanted it. And then adding the black and gold to the small bits under the holsters to make it more movie accurate. I will double check eventually if these hand bits are supposed to be also gold. Not 100% sure. Shows you how I like to get rid of a little bit of overspray and how I like to kind of bring out some of the detail in these all black bits. The only reason I only did it on the scabbard is because I feel that this would probably be some kind of plastic, whereas this over sash would probably be some kind of leather. Therefore, I didn't feel the need to give this any kind of wash because I don't have a leathery kind of wash. Same thing with the black parts of the suit. In the movie, I have such a hard time remembering now what kind of weathering they did on those black bits. So yeah, there we are. That's how I kind of went through and fixed my Deadpool. And now I'm sure that these bits are dry. That's still not 100% dry, but this side is. So now I'll just put the Desert Eagles back in the holsters. And those two hardly even touch, and when you move his leg, the Desert Eagles bend anyway. But when you have just a normal attention, there's not enough friction going on there for the paint to chip. And that's if you're not coating it. I will be coating mine with a with a matte sealant, just to make it a little more movie accurate, because he is very matte and not so shiny in a lot of areas in the film. So from there, we have Deadpool. Now, I didn't go back and paint the gold bits on the sword only because it's too small for I don't have my glasses with me. I'm not able to see it. So I will just leave that be for now. And if I see somebody do it and I think, wow, that looks great, I might come back and do it. But as of now, I'm happy with how this figure looks. And like I said, this wasn't, oh, I need to customize the whole thing. This was just touch-ups. I like to do touch-ups on my figures just to make them that much more perfect or close to the movie rendition. So, like I said, just another overview. Pouches or pieces of leather underneath the belt that connect to the holsters. Touched up how I remove paint from the top here, what kind of paints I use to just do some general touch-ups, and a little bit of a gray wash on the scabbard. It is really faint. It is really hard to see on camera because of the sheen of the plastic. It is there, but it is very faint, and it is mostly in the scratches that are a little more apparent. So overall, I mean, I really enjoy this figure. I think it's fun. I think it's a fantastic alternative. So waiting for the SH Figure Arts, excuse me, waiting for the SH Figure Arts that probably won't come out till next January, or at the earliest probably December. SHF and Mayfix take a long time to make things, but yeah. So there's Daredevil, or not Daredevil. There's Deadpool. Excuse me. Looking at another red character recently too. But yeah, so I'm very happy with how this turned out. With the matte coating, I'm sure it will look even better. Off camera, I might see what I could do about adding a little more black wash, just to make it a little more apparent. But generally, I'm pretty happy with this. So yeah, that's how I have fixed Deadpool. Thank you for tuning in to a figure fix. I'm going to try and upload often. I know this is a longer video, but I figured this is the first. It's also a how to fix paint tutorial, or how I operate things. Reviews will be shorter. Posing sessions will be shorter. This is just in-depth, no edits, no cuts look at how I do things and how long it actually takes to come in and do these kinds of things without lots of cutting, and so you get a sense of how long and how quickly you can do a lot of these mods. I mean, the timer on my camera right now says 31 minutes, which is not bad for painting, waiting for the paint to dry, and then doing other coats. So yeah, well, thanks for tuning in. This has been the Collectosphere. I hope you subscribe. I hope you join our little globe that I'm trying to create. I am a collector of many things. I do Marvel, I do DC, I do Star Wars. Near and dear to me is G.I. Joe. So stay tuned for reviews on those. I will try to keep as up to date as possible with figure releases and reveals. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.